Welcome to Perfecto Mobile and Propelics webinar. My name is Eran Kinsbrunner. I'm the Director of Product Marketing and a Mobile Quality Evangelist at Perfecto. And I want to welcome you in this webinar. Very quick, some housekeeping information for you. So this webinar, as all the other webinars, you are all in listening mode only. However, you are able to communicate with us and ask questions through the question panel in the system. So feel free to address any questions. We will answer them during the webinar and can follow up with you also after the webinar. So this is with regards to engaging with us. Another important thing is we are going to run 2 polls during this webinar, and I hope you can get your feedback on these questions, really interesting questions which we want to address during this webinar. We are also going to conduct a very quick survey at the end, and we encourage you to give us your feedback so we can improve for the next webinars. And last, we are going to have this webinar. This webinar is recording as we speak, so the recording and the slides will be available for you as you like on both Propelics web and our Perfecto Mobile website. If you have any questions around how to get the recording or the slide deck, you can also address the questions to us, but in general they will become available on our web and Propelics website in just 1 or 2 days after this webinar. So again, welcome to this webinar, and with that I'm really pleased to introduce you to Nitin Bhatia, which is online with me. Nitin, you can take it away from here, and welcome. Nitin?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
All right. Thank you, Eran. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Actually, good evening for some folks out there. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us for today's webinar on avoiding 6 challenges in the mobile app development that has been keeping enterprises from delivering on their mobile vision. As Eran mentioned, my name is Nitin Bhatia, and I'll be your speaker for today's webinar. I want to give you a quick background on Propelics before we get started. We are a company that focuses on mobile strategy and mobile app development for large companies. Our clients are spanning across the Fortune 500, as you can see from some of the logos on this slide. We have a long track record on advising companies on dealing with disruptive changes, and mobile is the disruptive change that Propelics is focused on. Companies are struggling to understand how mobile is applicable to their business in a meaningful way, and with our past experience in enterprise applications and enterprise strategies, we've helped companies drive some of that innovation and gain business value with mobile software and solutions for employees, partners, and customers. Our offices are located in San Jose, Boston, and Pittsburgh, although our client base is across the globe. Our service offerings fall into 3 areas of focus. We typically start with our enterprise mobile strategy service, where we help companies sift through mass amounts of use cases to identify the ones that deliver business value. We help companies navigate through the challenges that are prevalent in the mobile space while developing their mobile strategy. So this could entail creating an overall mobile strategy or curating a mobile app portfolio across different business units, or even creating an IT strategy by means of an IT readiness assessment. We also help companies by means of mobile advisory service, and this means we work with large companies serving as mobile advisors, performing boot camps, executive education, and innovation sessions to get the mobile thinking going. And lastly, Propelics also offers managed services that typically follow these strategy workshops in the prior 2 areas, where we take ideas from these sessions and bring them to reality by way of providing oversight on mobile initiatives and even in some cases get engaged with the mobile app development and support. So as Eran mentioned, here's a quick introduction on me. My name is Nitin Bhatia. I'm a senior mobile strategist with Propelics. My background has been mostly in consulting across multiple industries, helping clients deliver business value on their key initiatives. with a strong business background and strategic thinking of help companies bring ideas from post-it notes to reality. I'll now hand it off to Iran, who will introduce Perfecto Mobile as well as himself.
Thank you, Nidin. Perfecto Mobile, for those of you online who are not familiar, provides a mobile cloud platform which enables our customers, and customers can be software testers, developers, and performance/monitoring users to gain remote access to real devices, smartphone, tablets from all over the world to develop their mobile application and test it throughout the entire software development lifecycle. We provide products such as Mobile Cloud Interactive, Mobile Cloud Automation, Performance and Monitoring with tight integrations to leading ALM vendors such as IBM, HP, and Microsoft, but also to open source environments such as Eclipse, Selenium, JUnit, and others. We are providing a mobile cloud in different deployment options, either on-premise as a local cloud called Mobile Cloud Express, on a private cloud deployment option, which is either hosted by Perfecto Mobile or on-premise, on your premise, and also a public shared cloud with thousands of devices, real devices located around the world for you to run manual exploratory testing or develop your automation testing, continuous integration tests, and so on. About me, just shortly, I'm coming from a background of I've been a CTO for mobile testing for several years, also with Sun Microsystems for 7 years as part of the development of the J2ME technology, which is currently no longer existing, inherited by Android and iOS. And currently I am the Director of Product Marketing and a Mobile Quality Evangelist speaker at Perfecto Mobile. So that's about me.
Thanks, Iran. So here's a quick look at today's agenda. We'll start off by spending a few minutes sharing our insight about the enterprise mobile landscape. And then for the majority of the time, Iran and I will talk through the 6 challenges where we'll share our experiences on what we have seen enterprises typically struggle with, along with real-life examples from our past work. And towards the end, we'll share a bit about how our approach can alleviate these challenges. And then, as Iran mentioned, we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A for sure. So the enterprise space is littered with several challenges, and those challenges vary in their maturity. The enterprise mobility challenge has been one that's been making a lot of noise for the last few years, but as you all know. And as time has passed, organizations have started making some strides in the mobile app development space. And as you can see from the statistics here, several organizations have started getting past the initial hump of maybe building 1 or 2 apps that connect with their internal enterprise systems, serving a decent-sized audience. And this year, we're seeing organizations planning to kick things into high gear, hoping to move past the fundamental mobile needs around creation and management of BYOD policies, getting up to speed with the development platforms and things like that, and go after much larger initiatives in mobile. So some research from Gartner predicts that by 2015, IT organizations are going to be doing a lot more mobile app development projects in comparison to the traditional desktop development. But so far, as you can see from the pie chart here, 75% of the companies have 5 apps or less, and half of those have 1 app or none. And what this signals to us is that organizations are hitting a wall of challenges as they start looking past point solutions. And of course, let's not forget about our user, right? The enterprise user is expecting the same quality and the same experience as they get from their consumer apps, the apps that they use when they're not at work. So they're quick to download these apps because they're eager to use them, but they're even quick to delete them if it doesn't meet their expectations. So no matter how feature-rich your app is, without designing the right experience around those features, it will fail to gain any adoption. And these statistics, as you can see on the slide, should be sobering for any app developer out there who thinks that they can get away with substandard quality or a clunky user experience because they're catering to the enterprise audience.
Nitin, just a comment from my side. Just yesterday, Apple announced as a GA this iOS 7.1. So we will definitely address these challenges, but and one of them is the fragmentation. But we also see that the expectation as listed on the screen here will also be that starting today, for example, application which used to run on 7.0.6 automatically will be upgraded, and we're able to run with no regressions on performance, usability, and so forth, also on this iOS 7.1, which was just announced.
Yep. So finally, the mobile space in itself just inherently has its set of challenges, right? We're looking at multiple operating systems. You know, Apple and Android have their kind of dominant battle going on, and then we see across the board variability in devices, screen sizes, resolutions, complexities in development platforms. And sort of putting all this together is a task in itself, and the complex nature of this entire ecosystem can put any organization in a dizzy spell.
Yeah, I agree, Nitin. We also see as a trend, and I think that the trend becomes the reality, the additional device types such as wearables. And we have seen with the recent announcement, I've been in the Mobile World Congress a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and with the new Samsung S5 being announced, also it allows to get through sensors on the back of this device some additional inputs such as sport-related information and so on. So the additional challenges on developers and testers just continue to rise. So definitely agree with you that the market becomes more and more complex.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we continue, as this ecosystem continues to evolve, things don't seem to be getting any more simpler. So with these complexities, it's definitely caused a disruption in how organizations are thinking and approaching mobile app development. And the purpose of this webinar is to take some of those challenges and complexities and take them essentially to put a plan around it and put an action plan around it to meet the organization's mobile vision that they have for themselves. So here are the 6 challenges that we've identified organizations typically face. These are things around innovation, security, fragmentation, and of course testing. But before we get into any of these challenges in depth, let's take a quick poll question. Iran, could you please open up the polls?
Yes, I launched the poll right now, so I would ask the audience if you can give your state or what is your current challenge which you plan to tackle this year, or you think is the most complicated one. And I see that you are starting to vote, so appreciate your participation. And the votes are being completed. Yeah, go ahead, Nitin.
I was going to say, as people are filling out this poll, I just wanted to quickly give a background on why these 6 challenges, why these specific challenges. So back in 2011, 2012, organizations were stuck in what we determined as the value gap, where the demand for mobile was really high from the business, but the CIOs were taking a more cautious approach on what they wanted to put out there, and they delivered on a few consumer apps for productivity and things like that, but nothing was pushing boundaries. And now we're in 2014. And companies have started to feel more comfortable and starting to grow out of this value gap, maturing out of this phase, that they feel more comfortable with the basics and they're willing to kind of take a little more risk. So as we see the process of crossing this chasm, so to speak, these are the challenges that we've typically seen organizations kind of run into.
Yeah, Nitin, and as the audience voted, we see that what the most significant challenge which they plan to tackle this year are between the definition of appropriate user experience and fragmentation of devices and operating systems. So these are the most significant ones, but definitely security and picking the right development platform is also important for them. So back to you, Nitin.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I'm actually it's in line with what we were thinking, because a lot of organizations, as they start maturing out of this value gap, they hit the more harder issues, which is typically the user experience, and fragmentation in itself is constantly changing. So it is a kind of constantly changing landscape, so organizations have to keep up with how it's changing and then also try and tackle it. Okay, we'll just give it a few more seconds, and then we can kind of close off the polls.
Yeah, it's closed now. You can go on and proceed.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you for your participation. So let's start talking about these 6 challenges in a more in-depth. So the first one is identifying innovative mobile use cases. We've seen a lot of organizations kind of have a simple start around surfacing enterprise calendars or enterprise emails on mobile devices and call it mobile first, when in reality it's far from the true potential of enterprise mobility. Don't get me wrong. Actually, I think that's a great start. But companies, are struggling to identify innovative mobile use cases just that go beyond extending the enterprise. What we recommend instead companies do is challenge the current way of thinking. Work outside the limitations of the procedures and processes that have been put in place for years, and come up with a set of use cases that delivers high impact on the identified business drivers. So organizations should also think through what types of applications they want to focus on. So by now we all know that the consumer apps are almost a necessity to make sure your company and your brand has a presence in the marketplace. But there's just a whole slew of apps that needs to be kept in mind when putting together a mobile strategy. So for instance, building an app for employees that is specifically tailored to help customers with data that will otherwise live behind these enterprise walls, right? So this could be sales data or inventory data or product delivery information that the employee can leverage to engage the customer and create a great in-store experience. There are also great opportunities around apps for partners and resellers that will essentially help them communicate and collaborate much better across the two business entities. And lastly, we feel that there are valuable use cases around employee, giving them the information to do their job much more effectively without being tethered to a computer or behind the counter.
And just a comment on this meeting, I think that as these use cases continue to become more and more complex, and either if it's an internal application or an external application, do think, as we mentioned, on the end user experience from performance perspective, compliance with regulations, compliance with different devices and operating systems, and we see also questions coming in around this, so we will address them later on this webinar. But keep in mind also this end user experience as you evolve your complexities of your mobile applications.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's exactly what we're going to get into is how do we define that end user experience? How organizations have been looking at mobile as just another screen, right? So just another screen, perhaps just to surface information or just one-way communication, and fail to truly understand how their end users, be it employees or partners or customers, are using these devices today. So just by shrinking, an ERP system or a CRM system or an inventory management system onto a mobile device, it doesn't mean we've achieved value, when in fact all we've done is aggravated the end user. Furthermore, we feel that developing an app without clearly understanding the target audience and its motivations can end up being an app that's made for everybody and nobody at the same time. And what I mean by that is the mobile app is not providing value to any specific set of users and ends up being just a generic app that just gets deleted. So instead, what we're recommending is step into the shoes of the end user and understand how they work today, what their pain points are, identify the inefficiencies that have been built into the system over years and decades. These users have been doing it a certain way, so they've forgotten to question it. It almost comes natural to them now. And by means of this knowledge, organizations can design a solution keeping the motivation, the behavior, the usage patterns of the end user sort of front and center. So here's an example of some of the day in the life sessions that we run for our clients. And we spend numerous hours with our end user. We're be it on the factory floor or in a truck or in stores. So by talking to our end users one-on-one, we get a sense of the true picture. So instead of sitting in a conference room and in front of whiteboards and trying to project what the user is trying to do or perhaps could be doing, we're actually in the field understanding, talking to them, and getting input from them. So keeping with the theme of user experience, we also wanted to kind of add to that is mobility should not be treated as a bolt-on on top of existing enterprise systems. These enterprise systems were designed and developed years ago under a paradigm that worked in that era. And that's fine, but it doesn't apply to today's mobile usage pattern. So what we see is in a rush to provide mobile access, companies are extending desktop applications or sometimes even the entire environment through virtualization to a mobile device. Also, it's a quick way to gain access to the applications that the users are using on a daily basis. But what it ends up doing is it creates a very cumbersome user experience. And the same applies to when companies choose to surface large data stores that could inundate the user, sort of leaving it up to them to make sense of all that information on their tiny screen. And as we sort of continue down the spectrum, we also see companies are either kind of snapping on mobile apps at the end of the project, either failing to understand how important it was, or creating a mobile website for those existing enterprise applications without fully understanding the applicable features and the use cases for a mobile device. So we're cautioning companies from falling into these traps, or what I like to refer as the mobile-first shortcut. And honestly, they really don't provide the long-term benefit and lack the stickiness that is needed for app adoption. So some additional considerations here would be to kind of revisit the process and make sure you're working outside the limitations, as I mentioned earlier, to simplify the complexities and design an experience that's tailored for those end users. We feel that the context of where the end user is using the app should also be considered, right? Overall, just user experience is an absolute critical part of developing mobile apps, and we recommend performing the day in the life sessions that I mentioned earlier to understand the end user's needs and not replicate Excel sheet-based forms or full-feature ERP systems onto a mobile device.
Even just for this slide, from a testing perspective, I would say that on the usability part, first of all, there are some guidelines which both Apple and Google obviously provide, and following them definitely will bring you closer to a proper usability from the end user perspective. Second of all, there are some obvious things which and very easy to do are things around the day in the life. So as you mentioned, getting closer to the end user and making the most commonly actions performed through the application available to him on the home screen, if you like, definitely can help with regards to the adoption rate of this application. So have all the most commonly used activities from the mobile application accessible, easy, from the home screen through the main menu. And as mentioned earlier, performance is definitely a key also for continuous adoption of this mobile application.
Yeah. So just to put that all in an example, here's an example that demonstrates how apping the process doesn't really work. Our client initially had a form-based process that the user would have to fill out and fax into the office. And the user was essentially a person who had to manage 20+ stores and on any given day. And they were visiting multiple stores, so they had a lot of running around to do on a regular basis just to make sure everything was on point in the store. So given the volume of stores that the users had to cover, our client, in the hope of making the process more streamlined and more simple, took that form and replicated it on an iPad device. And very quickly they noticed a decline in their utilization of these forms. So we came in, we performed a few day in the life sessions to understand why that was the case, and started noticing some issues that the iPad app had inherently. One was the form was just overly complex. There was just a lot of typing to do, and at times some of these stores were located in areas that did not even have reception. So these forms were not even available for offline use. And that made it extremely excruciating for the user. So we took these findings and developed a second iteration of the app that kept the needs of the user in focus, understanding what devices are they carrying, entering only Delta information to simplify data entry, leveraging device hardware capabilities such as GPS and camera to create that rich and contextual experience. Right, so we're keeping that user in mind, and we're also using the information around them to help them. So by addressing the two pain points, what we did is we achieved a lot higher adoption, leading to a higher utilization in the application. So Iran, I know you referred to this slide before, and it talks about the usability, but I think testing is definitely one of those things that can further refine the user experience.
Yeah, you're right, Nitin. I think that addressing the points on the screen are important. A thing which is not listed and was not yet mentioned is the fact that as an application developer, you ought to listen to the voice of the customer. You need to monitor the App Store post your application deployment in the App Store, Google Play or Apple App Store, because we see often that many feedbacks are being sent through the app stores, and some often are being neglected. So also as part of the application adoption, or as part of the application growth and maturity, you need to listen to your customers. And if you see, for example, that either there are devices which are not properly supported, operating systems which are not properly supported, issues around functionality, security, usability, addressing them, commenting on them in the App Store definitely gives you points and definitely increases the chances of this application becoming more and more in use by the market.
Yeah, that's a great point, Iran, and we'll talk about some of that when we get to our shifting paradigms challenge. But I completely agree with you. So our next challenge is around security, and this is a topic that has been talked about a lot when any organization is discussing mobile, and rightfully so, because we understand that organizations need to protect their information and their brand to remain competitive. So back in 2011, 2012, organizations went with the hardline MDM approach to ensure that their information was safe on the mobile devices. I think that was their top priority. And now we're seeing companies realize that MDM is a piece of the puzzle, and it's really complex to secure corporate information. And they've also realized that not all information belongs on a mobile device. So IT has a variety of security levers that they control and manage, and they're really responsible for creating a balanced approach to securing the information that doesn't take away from the user experience. So instead, what we recommend organizations to do is perform a risk analysis to understand what type of information is being surfaced and what's the impact of that exposure on that information for each of the use cases. And essentially they'll arrive at with this matrix that you see on the slide, which will essentially help them gauge the risk-reward trade-off scores for all the use cases and surface those golden nugget use cases that are deemed low risk, high reward that organizations should probably go tackle first. Our next challenge is sort of shifting IT paradigms, and by this what I mean is our organizations are large and complex organisms, and a majority of the app development experience has been in the traditional desktop environment with large cycles around requirements gathering and pages of documentation, even before a single line of code is put down. And what's at stake is at the end of, say, 6 or 9 months, when they do launch, it has huge risk associated with being able to meet the user's expectations and if the application is still applicable in the marketplace. So mobile doesn't fit that paradigm. With the pace at which the mobile landscape is evolving, 6 or 9 months later, the app is already obsolete even before it's deployed to its users. And apart from the development cycle, the organization should also sort of look at the other processes outside of their development cycle. So that could be capital budgeting process or their future release planning to align it appropriately with the pace of development. So in order to be able to prove the value and ROI earlier on, we recommend organizations chunk the application out into smaller deliverables and go through several iterations, incorporating end user feedback as you go. So that's kind of looking at the reviews and making sure that you're addressing those. And by doing so, what we're doing is 2 things. We're first ensuring that we're in line with our user expectations, and secondly, we're also kind of creating an opportunity for us to be able to pivot at any point in time if we need to. And by pivoting, I mean the landscape is constantly changing, so your users' needs could have changed, or the competitive landscape has changed, or the need doesn't exist anymore. So what we've done is, so instead of taking a huge chunk of cash and locking developers in a room somewhere and hoping for a miracle at the end of the year, we're moving to a more earned value model, where we focus on understanding what value is being delivered sort of each step of the way as we go through the process. And now Eran will sort of compare and contrast the 2 approaches.
Right. So definitely the mobile space, mobile application development lifecycle ought to become short, and it becomes short, and we see it every day. And as a matter of fact, I just came aware of new research by Forrester, who is mentioning that almost 49% of the developer time is being spent on testing the newly integrated code or features in the mobile application. So the days in which we were used to like a 4 to 6 month release cycle towards the GA is definitely gone, and the organization are mandated to deliver faster with higher quality and higher performance. And in the background, I got a question about performance. So performance is also something in mobile that must be part of the continuous integration. It can be part of the continuous integration lifecycle, doing performance testing during the development phase with tools such as network virtualization, and definitely on real devices connected to real networks is something feasible. And we see that in peak hours, in different geographies, even in different hours in a day, the mobile application performs differently on specific browsers, specific operating systems, and so on. So plugging the performance testing also as part of your continuous integration shorter cycle is definitely something which is required. And if you move to the next slide, please, Nitin,
sure.
we will see that for mobile projects, the expectation today is to do very shorter iteration, and to do this shorter iteration, as Nitin showed in his slide, everything is moving towards continuous integration, continuous deployment. But to be able to do it, you need to test earlier. So testing earlier means developing unit testing on real devices, on real networks, and getting the insight on the content as soon as possible. And as also we mentioned in the beginning, you have no other choice. The mobile is moving so fast. You see so many new releases of devices, operating systems. Just as I mentioned in Mobile World Congress, we've seen announcements of dozens of new devices which are being populated and added to the market, to the mix. So definitely you need to be agile here. There is no other choice, and everything is moving towards this method. So that's mostly the requirements, and as we see them, and I'm sure you see it also on your projects, Nitin.
Yeah, and I think we have a poll question now to understand what the current sort of MADP solutions are the people in the audience using currently?
Yes, I'm launching it right now, and I think that whatever development platform, mobile application development platform which you use has its own, I would say, implication on the entire software development lifecycle. What do you think it is?
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, as organizations are sort of looking through the spectrum of all these MADP solutions, there are several things, you know, they should keep in mind. Like, you know, we've talked about how the landscape is changing. So, you know, what's the vendor's history sort of? Are they going to be around for the next 6 months or the next 2 years? What's their product vision? And does the organization have the right development skills to kind of use this MADP platform? And a lot of considerations that could be its own webinar on how to choose sort of the right development platform for the organization.
Yeah, and I see that people are voting. Thanks everyone for voting. I'm going to stop the voting now, and I will share the screen with you. I'm sure that you can see it. So from the vote, what we see is that 42% of the audience uses Xcode and Eclipse IDEs, which are the native IDEs for mobile applications, rather than a very small percentage are using the non-native, if you like, mobile application development platforms such as Titanium, Kony, and PhoneGap, even though they have the additional benefits. So people, the audience still prefer to develop the Android application in Eclipse, for example, and the iOS application in Xcode, even though it's not a mobile application development platform as a product itself. It's just an IDE. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, that definitely is interesting. All right, so our next challenge, and I don't think our list would be complete without talking about fragmentation. Fragmentation has, you know, plagued the mobile landscape, and most notably the Android space, as you can see from the slide, with multiple device manufacturers and hardware variations across these manufacturers and custom variants of operating systems. The Android space is just definitely a challenge to develop and test mobile apps for. And as Iran already mentioned, with the Mobile World Congress, they're just continuing to add more and more devices to make this chart more and more scarier. And in comparison to the iOS space, it seems to be fairly manageable. So on this slide, we have sort of some data for iOS 6, but I think with iOS 7 being out there for slightly short of 6 months now, Apple announced last month that they had almost 80 to 82% adoption for their new OS, and only 17% on iOS 6. And that compared to the Android spread is just, you know, piece of cake. And even in terms of the screen sizes, we see that there isn't a whole lot of variability when we look at the Apple devices, and the Android screen sizes are just all over the place. So the point that I'm trying to make is, with all this variability, you know, there's a significant cost associated with it. The more devices, the more operating systems, the more screens an organization decides to support, the higher the cost of development and testing those mobile apps, and not to mention the additional complexity of manufacturer variants. So instead of looking to support a sea of devices, we recommend organizations first understand the mobile footprint of the audience. So this would include understanding what types of devices they're using. Are they on the latest version of the operating system? What screen sizes are typical amongst these users? And then focus on composing the right device mix for developing and testing the mobile app. And Iran, I think this slide will help our audience understand how to put that device mix together.
Right, and actually one of the questions in the panel was around how do we select the device mix across the application lifecycle, the different development phases, and devices versus emulators. So there was a question asked in the panel, so I will address this as part of this slide as well. So definitely, as you mentioned it, in taking into consideration the device scale drivers such as the vertical and market segment in which you are operating. So if you are an enterprise bank or an insurance company or, I don't know, a retail, okay, we see as a provider of a mobile cloud, we are able to support any operating system, any device. And we sometimes recommend our customers which devices to test on. However, the customers have their own freedom to choose which devices to put on their own cloud. And we see differences, material differences, between verticals, between market segments in the device mix which they choose. So look at your I would say counterparts or competitors and see which devices they take as part of their device mix. It's also something which is valuable for you. The number of mobile applications which you develop also has implication on how many devices and of course on which devices. Some applications target different audiences rather than others. So it's also an element which you need to consider. Where the team size and the team location, this will also, as I mentioned, these are the elements or parameters in your mix which will allow you to scale up and down the total number of devices. The mix itself, or how you select the devices, as I mentioned earlier, you have the MySpace. MySpace is your vertical. Which vertical do you operate in? Me relates to the analytics. We see many of our customers, and we know it as a fact, that customers use their own analytics to determine which devices are being used by the end user. They have an agent, they get the user agent back from their application, and they are able to identify which devices are mostly used by their end users. It's also definitely an important piece of the puzzle. And the market, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, Mobile World Congress, new devices, etc., new operating systems, the market changes. You need to put some of the, you need to be aware of the market changes and also continue to refresh your device mix. And as you mentioned, Edith, we have the screen resolution, the operating system version, and we recommend to usually test at least on the latest two to three latest OSs. So if starting yesterday we have iOS 7.1, so I will go with the iOS 7.1, iOS 7.0, and iOS 6.1.1, if you will, and a lower priority to iOS 5, even though for market adoption it's a small piece, the iOS 5.x, but from backward compatibility, it's not something which you need to neglect. So I will put just the short priority on the older devices, on the legacy devices and operating system, just to be on the safe side here. And again, we have the device type, smartphone versus tablet. It's again related to your target market. At the end, you will see that we will make available some kind of a survey or a research which we did based on the market, on the cloud usage which we have. We'll give you some insight why different markets use different device types based on their audience. So that's basically I would say, the model consideration. We have more information going on later in this webinar.
All right. And we've saved the best for last. Our final challenge is testing the good old way. And what we mean by that is over the years, the QA function in an organization has been testing applications with an approach that they have formulated over months and years of successful application delivery. And this is the approach that we're calling the good old way. And organizations are failing to consider the nuances that make or break the success of a mobile app and treat the testing for a mobile app as something that can be done within a matter of days, sitting in a conference room or in a cube somewhere. And we recommend organizations put a more comprehensive plan, put more thought into it, and test devices not only on simulators but also on actual devices. We also recommend organizations go out into the field where the end users will be actually using the app and test the devices there to iron out any kinks that are dependent on the carrier or the online-offline behavior or memory leaks, even when used with other apps in the background. So as you're going through the process, make sure you keep the user in the loop about these defects and the defects that you're finding and the defects that you're fixing. So essentially what you're doing is you're building some confidence in the user about the changes that are coming through into the app. And Iran, I know we're running a little bit low on time, so I'll hand this next slide over to you. And can we quickly walk through the the different categories?
Yes, surely. So to make it very quick, and as I mentioned in the beginning, the entire slide again webinar is recorded and will be available for you. So Basically, this is like the mandatory, in my case, checklist for your test plan for your mobile application. And you see here there are different considerations, different methodologies which we need to take into account when doing the testing on real devices mostly, and less on emulators, because emulators cannot really replicate the end user experience, and definitely not running the latest operating system which will be eventually out there. So taking some examples, so we have functional testing, non-functional, which are the performance, network virtualization, network condition. We have the interoperability, which is sometimes neglected. Incoming events such as voice, SMSs, notifications, battery and cable removals, SD card insert and taking out while the application is executed. These kind of test cases definitely can guarantee a better functioning application and can avoid some, I say, post-production surprises. Testing for memory leaks, performance testing we mentioned earlier is definitely a key. Taking the installation testing really in consideration. As I mentioned earlier, we have the iOS 7.1. The upgrade and downgrade of your application is definitely a mandatory test here. Security Nitin addressed earlier, and doing localization testing also. So this is like I would say the mix of test plans, test consideration which you need to build in your mobile application on the right mix of devices.
Thanks, Eran. So to kind of summarize, these are the 6 challenges that organizations are typically kind of facing, and they're across the board, from innovation to security to user experience, and it almost makes it kind of impossible for an organization to know where to start from. And what I want to share with you today is our Kickstart program that we've used to help a lot of organizations mitigate these challenges. And I'll try and quickly walk through this. This is essentially a 4-step process where in the first 3 steps, we're really spending the time to understand the need and the constraints. The first step is kind of focusing on understanding the business drivers and the market opportunities, doing a lot of the day in the live sessions that we talked about. And in the second step, we identify kind of the few core concepts, that we want to quickly visualize into a mobile app, something tangible that we can take to our end user and get feedback and define that appropriate experience based on that feedback. And sort of the third step that a lot of companies kind of overlook and just jump right into development is crucial, and that's where they hit a lot of challenges, is kind of making sure you're putting together the appropriate device mix you're going to support, a testing plan, a release plan for future iteration. So the goal of this entire process is not the mobile app itself. It's kind of to make sure that we have an app out there that has ongoing support and feature updates as needed. And again, as I mentioned, this has really kind of worked for us in the past, and we've packaged it into a Kickstart, and I really wanted to share with you. One final point I wanted to make, that this doesn't have to be a behemoth of a process. So the purpose is not to scare you away with these challenges or for you to have like a grand master plan in place before we get started. As we discussed on an earlier slide, we've designed our Kickstarts to be very short and iterative, focused on 2 weeks where we're providing value as we go. Because the ultimate cost of not doing anything could be a lot. It could be loss of revenue, market share, employee productivity, and just much more. So what we're doing is we want to point you out to this white paper that we have on our website, propelics.com, under resources. And this white paper covers a lot of the best practices that you typically see in the SDLC. So it'll help you kind of put together an approach to successfully execute on your mobile application development initiatives. And Perfecto Mobile is also offering a white paper on mobile functional testing. To download this white paper, go to their website, perfectomobile.com, and click on the banner on their homepage. There's a lot of good detail that we weren't able to cover today on functional testing specifically for mobile use cases. Did you want to add something to that, Eran?
Yeah, actually in this report you will be able to see, as I mentioned earlier, real device usage statistics on what devices, smartphone and tablets, different verticals are testing on, with some key insight which might help you also, and many of the questions in the background were around which devices do I need to test on. So this report might be able to give some, shed some light on this question and consideration. So thanks, Nidhi.
Sure. So that's all the content we had for today's webinar. And once again, I wanted to thank you for your time. And before we get to the questions, I have this special offer for you. We're offering a free 1-hour advisory call with one of our partners or mobile strategists to discuss the Kickstarter I presented earlier on mobile app scoping and planning. Or you can even go to our website, propelics.com, to check out some of the other Kickstarters that you see on this slide. You can email us at info@propelics.com or give us a call on the toll-free number, and we'll be happy to schedule a conversation with you or your team. So with that, Eran, let's jump into some of the questions.
Yes, thank you, Ethan, for great content, and thank you everyone in the background for asking us the questions and giving us the feedback. So apparently, some of the feedback were around enjoying the content and how do we get it. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the slides themselves and the webinar recording will be available on Propelics website and on Perfecto Mobile website. I believe 1 to 2 days from today, so stay tuned. If you cannot wait, just email myself or Nitin and we will share it with you as an attachment. So that's with regards to the, I would say, housekeeping and getting the content. A question which was asked several times, and I'm not sure we addressed it sufficiently. From the different development phases, a question came around the importance of using emulators versus real devices. So I would just give my side of the approach, which I believe with using emulators versus real devices, and I would let you comment on it, Nitin, as well. So from usage of emulators, definitely the usage of emulators in the early stages of your mobile application development can be, I would say, useful even for some basic testing of your specific feature or so. However, when you're taking the integration and you want to see how this application works on real operating system, and we know that the Android SDK provides you very limited functionalities, and the OS version which is being used on the emulator is very far from what the OEM, the device manufacturer, will eventually deploy on his device. So an LG emulator and an LG device definitely behave differently, and definitely I recommend if you have specific thing which you would like to test locally, then do it. I am, from my experience, definitely recommend as soon as possible to work with real devices also for continuous integration, quickly understand how your device behaves on real device with real network connection and so on.
Yeah, I'm going to echo some of the same points that Eran has mentioned. Is emulators are great at the beginning, but we want to quickly kind of get into real devices because that allows us to test some of the real-world scenarios, as I was mentioning earlier. You know, in the field when you have 2 bars and you have 7 different applications running in the background, and the user is walking away from their phone. Like, what's the behavior? So we want to identify those scenarios in the field versus trying to, kind of simulate those in an emulator.
Right, Nitin, thank you. Another question which came in is around what about test automation on real devices? So as I mentioned in the beginning, so first of all, Perfecto Mobile provides you a mobile cloud automation capability on real devices in different networks, different locations. So definitely using test automation as part of your SDLC, your software development lifecycle, is a must if you would like to get into a continuous integration, continuous deployment method of working. And basically, I think this is the only way to go, the only way to keep up with mobile is Agile, and Agile mandates automation. It's as simple as that. So doing automation on real devices across platform, across operating systems is a key here, and you can do it in a cloud-based or locally, it doesn't matter, but definitely you need to move towards automation as soon as you can in order to do it. And I would just mention, if doing it in-house or in a cloud, you need to also take care in a sense around the governance of these devices. If you want to have an unattended automation as part of your continuous integration flow, these devices need to be managed somehow, either in a cloud or locally in a closet, which are governed by your IT and can assure that these devices are not stolen, not lost, and also always connected, always charged, and so on, so your automation can continue to run, and eventually in the morning, if you come, you will have your test results available for you. So this is another question which came in. There were questions also on the performance and the device mix, which we believe that we addressed. So I do not see here any additional critical question which we are not able to address during the session. So with that, I think that we can conclude this webinar. If you have questions which were not asked in a question panel, or you would like to ask them personally, please feel free to email either Nitin or myself, and we'll be able to assist you and provide you additional information. And with that, I would like to conclude this webinar. Appreciate if you can fill the survey at the end. And I would like to thank you, Nitin, for a great presentation and content. It was really insightful, and we look forward to see you all in our next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.